Greetings, my cousins. We're going to make some bread. Again, it's been a little while since I made bread. Actually, we're making some burger buns. But these are going to be a little bit different. These are going to be ciabatta style burger buns. Strictly speaking, I'm not really sure why they're called that, because the ciabatta should traditionally be a certain shape and it should be very airy inside, if you like. And I'm not sure these are going to be, well, they certainly won't be that shape, but I don't think they'll be that airy. But these are going to be black ones. But before we go into that, what I want to do is start off the yeast. So I've got some instant dried yeast here, 3 grams, and I've got 450 grams of water there. And I'm just going to add that in there, and we're just going to give that a little bit of a mix. And we're going to let that then dissolve up, if you like. Okay. So I'm just going to set that to one side. I've got this recipe from Bakery Bits website. I can't remember who the author was. If you go on their website, you can see all that the recipe and all these others as well. This is using one of the flours that you can get from them, an Italian flour. This is a Marino wheat flour, okay, and I've got 520 grams of that in there. And then we're going to be adding this stuff. Now this is basically carbon powder, charcoal powdered up. You want to be careful because it gets everywhere, okay. There's a variety of uses, but in cooking it's usually added, obviously, to change the colour. So what I've got there is 6 grams of this carbon powder. It's very fine, okay. I'm just going to add that into there, and then this should make our buns very black. Equally, it should help give us a slightly softer texture. Now, it's looking more grey than black at the moment, okay. But while we're waiting on that yeast, what we want to do is make sure we get the flour and that carbon powder all thoroughly mixed together. So there's a few little odd white spots there of flour lumps, and equally there's a few little black lumps of the charcoal. So I'm just going to make sure that's all broken up and all mixed through. Now we're going to be mixing things anyway, okay, but the only other ingredients you're going to want is some fine salt. I've got my Himalayan pink salt there. I've got 10 grams of that, and then we're going to add some Cotswold Gold rapeseed oil, okay, extra virgin cold pressed. Got 20 grams of that. So that's all that's going into it. Now we will decorate these final buns with sesame seeds. He says open, he can find them, but that's quite a way off, okay. So we're going to give that yeast a little bit longer, and then we'll start combining everything. That's my flour and charcoal all mixed together, and now we've got this yeast water, and I'm going to put that in there. Now I give that a good stir to make sure I didn't leave any lumps of yeast in there, and there you go, there's a bit in the bottom. And now we want to spend about 5 minutes just mixing this all together, and then we're going to let it rest for half hour. Just cover it over and let it rest. Okay, so just make sure that's all mixed in, and then, like I say, we're going to rest it for about half an hour. Right, that's rested for half an hour, and it is actually a little bit stickier now. It was very, very dry when I first did it, so we now need to knead it for about 10 minutes. Now if you've got a mixer, you want it on sort of a slow to medium for about 8 minutes, but we're probably going to need 10. Now, it does turn your hands black. It does wash off. It's all under your fingernails and makes it look like you're dirty. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a bit of flour down. And you keep that bowl, but what we want to do is now knead it for about 10 minutes. Okay, and then we'll be ready to mix in the salt and the oil, which are the last two remaining ingredients. Now I've put it back in the bowl because we're now just going to add in that salt. Notice with this salt in particular that when you stand it out for any length of time, well, not even any particular length of time, just out in the air, it does quite rapidly pick up moisture and start sort of caking a little bit. Right, now the reason I put it back in the bowl is for this stage, because I'm now just going to add that oil, and we're now going to knead all that in, and once it's not going everywhere, I should transfer it onto the surface here with a bit more flour, and we're then going to continue to knead it until it's forming a nice smooth dough. At the moment it is very oily. Need to just get that oil all mixed in there, and then it's going to go for quite a long proof or proving. Put it in a proving box like I've got, or we'll put it somewhere warm, and we're basically going to let it prove for about 2 to 3 hours. Now, after about the first hour and a half, we're just going to perform a fold on it. Okay, that's had an hour and a half in a rather warm base, and it's definitely increased in size, as you can see. Okay, so what we're now going to do is I'm just going to loosen it from that, it's instantly knocking some of that air out of that, and then we're just going to sort of stretch and fold it back in on itself. And then once I've done that a few times, again it's going to go and rest for another hour and a half, at which point we will do a final fold, and then we're almost ready to divide it up into our bread buns. Now we want to divide this up into about 80 gram pieces. Now I've weighed it and it's about 1 kilo of here, so we're looking at around about sort of 12 buns out of this. So let's have a look, and that's spot on 80, literally 80. So all we're going to do is just shape these into a little bun, and just put that seam side down. So I'm just going to cut this all up, put them on there, and then we want to cover it over, and we're going to then prove them for an hour. And at the same time I'm going to put my oven on 220, like I said, preferably without the fan, to get heated up. Here we are an hour later, and what we're going to do is to make it a little bit easier for the sesame seeds to stick on. It is quite sticky, but even so, not really sure they're going to stay stuck. So I'm just adding a little bit of water, and then Just going to sprinkle over the top some sesame seeds. These are optional, but it does add quite a nice little crunch to the finished bun, plus a little bit of contrast in terms of the colour. So I just do these, then these are going to go into that oven from 20 to 30 minutes. Once they're done, we'll obviously remove them and then let them cool. They need to cool completely. So I'm just going to do that now. I've got some large ice cubes there for making me Negronis, and I'm going to get a bit of steam in the oven. I'm going to put them in the tray at the bottom just before I shut it. Okay, so see them when they come out of the oven. Right, that's 20 minutes, and certainly the ones on the stone were done. So we're just going to transfer these to wire rack. Made a little dinky one because I had a little bit left over. However, we want to try and keep these soft. So while it's cooling, oops, don't touch that. We're going to just let that cool, covered over. Okay, now we're going to try them, or try one of them, but at this stage they're way too hot. Now, some of you more eagle-eyed people might notice there's a little one missing here. There's that tiny one, and I just did a taste test and then realised it ain't recorded any bit. So we'll have to try another. So I'm going to take this one because this one's slightly misshapen. The cloth over the top has kept the crust soft as such. It feels quite dense. Oops, don't want that one. Really braided knife. Let's just cut it in half, as it were. Although it's not a very good cut. You can see it's quite a nice crumb inside. It's not the big open crumb that you normally get in a ciabatta. There's sesame seeds going everywhere, but most of them are still stuck on there. So these are going to be used as burger buns. So I won't be adding anything to it, like butter, but in this case, just to try it out, I'm going to add a little bit of butter. Hot and crusty, a little bit chewy. Tastes a little bit tangy. But there you go. Your black ciabatta burger buns. Ideal for something like Halloween.